Welcome to the Startup Grind.
And with that, I'd like everyone to stand up. This is kind of our tradition. I'd like to please have everyone stand up, please. I'd like to introduce Kimberly Cargile. She's actually a very brave entrepreneur. She's very early on in the cannabis industry here in Sacramento. She was part of the founding team for A Therapeutic Alternative in 2009. It's been a model dispensary, and the city actually touts her and actually gives tours. And she actually helps other cannabis entrepreneurs get into the business. And she and actually Tracy are working on Khemia, did I pronounce it? Khemia Manufacturing. It's a cannabis manufacturing accelerator, and we'll find out more about that. With that, please give Kimberly a We want to start off with a standing ovation. That's kind of right.
That's very nice.
Thank
you. I've never got one before.
Well, usually what I'd like to do is I like to start off with getting a little bit, having the audience find out a little bit about yourself. It's like, where are you from? Like, what did your parents do?
Oh, okay. So I'm kind of from California. I was born in Florida. My parents were hippies. I was born at home.
Really?
And yeah.
Wow. So you're undocumented.
I was for a while. But my mom married a lawyer who campaigned to become a judge. So I grew up in a law office, homeschooled, which kind of gave me my roots in social justice. My dad was a hippie.
Oh, okay.
My mom was a hippie until she married the judge. And then she became a Republican. So I've seen all sides of everything.
And so what did you aspire to be when you were young?
I wanted to be a doctor, and I studied cellular and molecular biology for 5 years and was pre-med in college until I changed my major to liberal studies with a minor in psychology and a focus on social justice. I decided Western medicine was a broken system, and I wanted to work in holistic medicine.
I was pre-med too, but organic chem kicked my ass. So.
Yeah, that was hard.
So how did you get in the cannabis industry? Like, how did you get into it?
Yeah, I went to Humboldt State University, and
so you had a minor then. Cannabis studies.
If you weren't in cannabis, you should have been. But really, I was a personal fitness trainer and a yoga instructor studying natural medicine, working my way through college. And my mentor, who's out there in the audience tonight taking pictures, she was my yoga instructor and taught me all about herbalism and natural medicine. And I started studying about natural medicine and found out about the systematic oppression of natural medicine in this country. Mm-hmm. And so I spent 2 more years studying a variety of groups of people who have been oppressed in this country, how they rose above it, how the whole system got to where it's at, and how we're unraveling it.
When you say oppressed, are you saying that they repress the knowledge of or what does that mean?
Just about every system in this country oppresses a variety of groups of people.
Okay.
And we've slowly been breaking that down over the last 50 years. And natural medicine, we've been working on that approximately the last 20 years. Really, we've seen progress in the last 5 years, but 5 to 10 years.
Okay. So, all right. And then, so you were part of the...
Do you want an example?
Yes, please.
Okay. So 20 years ago, when I started studying about this, there were not cannabis collectives. On 30 in the city of Sacramento. There were not yoga studios on every corner, and the natural food store was not the biggest grocery store in Midtown Sacramento. Natural medicine was not, chiropractic, massage therapy was not covered by insurance. However, today it's covered by some insurance companies. And the entire system of natural medicine was very much more repressed 20 years ago than it is today. We've seen a steady incline of all those industries I just talked about since the early 2000s.
Okay. And you're part of the founding team at A Therapeutic Alternative. Tell me what that was like.
So when I graduated college, I moved to Sacramento and started managing one of Sacramento, State of California's first dispensaries. And I became a patient's rights advocate and started working with Americans for Safe Access.
But it was like, wasn't it like kind of scary? Like, you know, like I think when you and I talked, you described it as a Wild West.
Yeah.
There was no regulations,
Yeah.
so.
So back then, I went to work with Haley back there, my girlfriend, and every day, every day we went to work, we thought, today's the day. We're getting raided, the guns are coming to our heads, we're going to prison. Every day we thought about that. We don't think about that today. But every day, 10 years ago, we thought about that, driving to work, going, today's the day, it could happen today. Okay, do I know the plan?
Did you have a plan?
We had extensive training and extensive plans. We had plans if other people got raided, if other businesses got raided, how we were going to shut down and go protest and contact Americans for Safe Access and the National Organization for the Reform of Marijuana Laws, and what we were going to do. We had plans if we were going to get raided, who would call to pick up the kids so they didn't get taken by CPS, call the bail bondsman, secure the business as far as any kind of records, what to do, what are our rights. We only have 3 rights as a medical cannabis patient. You give up everything else. We have a right to remain silent, a right to a lawyer, and a right to not consent to a search. And we have to assert those rights, and everyone has to assert those rights if we're going to survive the raid. So it was pretty intense.
So that's why I said you're very brave, because I work with a lot of startups, and the worst that could happen to us is to go bankrupt. But I talked about there's people could go to jail.
Yeah. Well, we don't go bankrupt unless you're not. I mean, it's very hard to go bankrupt in the cannabis industry, but you could go to prison.
Right.
That's
what's scary. So, like, how did and it was the Wild West. So there was, other than the fact that it was allowed in California, medical cannabis, there was no real regulation. So how did you navigate through that?
So Proposition 215 was passed by the vote of the people in 1996. And it's a one-page law that basically says seriously ill Californians have the right to obtain and use cannabis. But it doesn't say how they have a right to obtain and use cannabis. And when we voted for it, just like when we voted for Proposition 64, we thought that we would have a store we can go to, a legal store to obtain the cannabis, to use it legally. But that system wasn't really set up. And so what happened is activists kind of had to step up and build a system, build the self-regulated or unregulated system that we've had for the last 20 years. And so I just so happened to, not have much to lose. And so I didn't have a good job, because you can lose your job. I didn't have children, you can lose your children. I wasn't in public housing, so you could lose housing. And so when I found out about the need for safe access in Sacramento, I realized that I had kind of a right and responsibility to stand up for those that were too sick or too scared to stand up for themselves.
So it really was a brave act. So when you opened the door, what type of stuff? I mean, you had your contingency plan. That's interesting. Never thought about having a contingency plan. But what other things did how were you navigating in a wild west of this industry? What other things were you doing?
It's kind of surreal. So it's interesting running a business that you can't advertise. You don't have banking. You have very limited access to insurance or security companies. It was just, very creative business management, and really what drove us all, we were all activists, working under the collective model of operation for the last 20 years. And what really drove us all was just knowing that this had to be done, that patients were coming to us because cannabis was helping them, and we had to stay open. So it was just taking it day by day. How do we stay open today?
So, what are some of the other, you mentioned a few other challenges you had, like banking, and how do you handle banking and money?
Okay. I get a new bank account every month. I just it's the top of the to-do list, get a new bank account. Really. And it's a lot of my time. It's so ridiculous. So going back to our industry and the connection to repression and systematic oppression. So systematic oppression is discrimination, segregation, and not letting people have access to systems like banking or insurance or healthcare or real estate or financing. And so this is one of the ways that the cannabis industry is repressed, is by not having access to banking because it is a Schedule I federal, it's a Schedule I for the Drug Enforcement Agency has put it on Schedule I, so it basically denies us access to banking because banking is regulated by the federal government.
So like how do you handle that, or how do you like,
So very creatively, we have extensive cash handling procedures, and we just keep moving banks. So they shut us down and we go get a new bank.
So, and I think you mentioned like you count cash like 8 times a day?
So cash is counted 8 times, and this is standard cash handling. It's just that we talk about it a lot because, Starbucks does it, Domino's Pizza does it, nobody cares. We talk about it all the time. But we have, cash is counted 8 times from the time it comes into the business to the time it leaves. And obviously, just like any other cash handling, 2 people are involved, 2 codes to the safe, the whole extensive SOPs around cash handling, just to make sure that, no problems are associated with it.
Okay. And one of the things when I met with you last time, I thought was very interesting, you were actually kind of proactive on the regulation side. So can you talk about how you handle how you handle the regulation side?
Well, we've been advocating for regulations for over a decade, and the reason why we need regulations is because regulations protect consumers, they protect the environment, and they protect the general public. So we need regulations. Dealing with regulations, operating under extensive regulations is not fun and not easy. However, it is necessary, and so we have the mentality that, and you've heard this phrase, if you're not at the table, you're on the menu, right? And so they say that a lot in the cannabis industry. So we're at the table. We're today spent 2 hours educating the Bureau of Cannabis Control, Department of Consumer Affairs, Criminal Investigation Unit on our operations, on our products, what we're doing. So every week we do government affairs, we bring them in, we spend hours with them educating on our processes, on our operations, so that they can enact better regulations for our industry. And we've done that with senators, assembly people, city council members, supervisors for the last 5 years, just every week, government tours, and just trying to educate as many people as we can.
Are they coming to you, or are they asking or are you inviting them over?
So I used to invite them. I used to every week send out like 10 letters, but now they just call us because they hear from their friends, oh, I went on this tour, you should go on this tour, you should learn. So, but we started out by every week just sending out letters, inviting them.
And you go to like a lot of city council meetings too?
Yeah. So our team says if it's Tuesday, there's a city council meeting somewhere we can be at. And so one of us is always at a city council meeting within an hour and a half of Sacramento advocating for cannabis. And in the morning, there's typically Board of Supervisors meetings, so we go to those too.
Wow. So one thing that was very interesting was that, and I have another client that had a cannabis dispensary that was raided and he got sent to jail. How have you avoided that, or avoided being sent to jail, or the fear of the raid?
Yeah. Okay, so there's different raids. There's different levels of raids. There's local raids, and there's state raids, and there's federal raids. And so different levels of raids can get you in different amounts of trouble. Your friend is a friend of mine also. I remember the day he was raided, and Americans for Safe Access was called to go protest. And I'm happy that he's out of prison now. That's awesome. And so I have been raided by Sacramento Sheriff, and yeah.
So what happened? Like, they come in and...
They came in, they took everything. I videotaped them and explained to them that we were following state law, recited the law for them. They said that they were following federal law. I explained to them that they can't follow federal law because they work for the state government. I spent about a half an hour while they were taking everything, just educating them on the endocannabinoid system, cannabinoids, the fact that their friends and family members were most likely coming to us because they needed help and they needed education, and what they were doing was wrong, and they still took everything. And we went to court. For a while, everything disappeared. Miraculously, it came back. We found it. It was in Rancho Cordova at the Sheriff's Department.
You mean all the product?
Yeah, all the products. So we went to court. We got a court-ordered return of product. We took our lawyer and a couple patients down to the Rancho Cordova Sheriff's Department on Christmas Eve, 2011, with the news, and took back my 2 pounds of cannabis. Took it out. They yelled at us, "Where are you going with that cannabis?" We said, "To an undisclosed location." We took it back and sold it as the sheriff's special. Yep. So, true story. True story. Yeah. Yeah.
Was that the only time you've been raided?
Yes, that was the only time I've been raided.
Okay.
Yeah.
But
The night is young.
The other raids.
Yeah, I avoided the federal raids. A lot of my friends and family did not, and I don't.
So is it?
know how.
I think when I was there, you seemed like you ran a tight ship. What I saw. Is that because you think it's because maybe your political outreach or the fact that you have the reputation of running a tight ship?
I think it's because it's the right thing to do. So the regulations that were put in place for a reason. There's problems with the regulatory process, mostly because local governments aren't giving out permits, and so people can't apply for the state license. But within the state regulations, there's not a whole lot that's like drastically horrible. If you can get a state permit, which local cities and counties should be regulating and giving state permits, then you can enter into the regulated, licensed, and taxed market. And all of those regulations aren't so bad. I'm the crazy person that runs around like, "Do you have your badge on?" I kind of freaked out for a second because I didn't have my badge on, and I figured out I've been out at work, so I'm legal. But, there's so many little regulations we have to follow, but once we get going and once we follow them, it's just like, a pharmacy, they have to have badges too, contractors, they have to have their license number on their advertisement. It's not all that bad. But the bad part is that people can't enter that market. They're stuck on this side of the fence because local cities and counties aren't giving out permits like they should be. And so people are stuck in the unregulated market, and that's the problem we're facing right now.
Yeah, I've seen that personally with people that I know that have had businesses, and they're kind of like in limbo.
Yeah.
They're in limbo, and almost everywhere. The manufacturing, dispensary, delivery service, they're sort of in limbo because they can't go forward.
Yeah.
Or they shut down.
Yeah.
In terms of what is it seems like for a therapeutic alternative. What's your vision for that specifically? You just want to keep it there, or are you looking at growing it?
We want to stay in Midtown East Sacramento for the rest of my life. I want to work there till I'm 70, and I want to get back into teaching yoga and continue to work on our Healing Yourself Naturally program and continue to work with children. And I think a therapeutic alternative, our goal is to stay open as long as possible, right? The train's on the track, we gotta keep it there. That's the hard part, just keep the train on the track. And so, that whole idea could be drastically different next year, and I could have a whole new vision because things will change, but at this point, we really just want to stay open for our patients and for our employees.
Have you thought about expanding or opening new offices? Or?
Yeah. So, there's a program that I am working with that we've established, me and my awesome friends that work at A Therapeutic Alternative, and it's a mentoring program. So the people that I've worked with for the last 10 years over multiple businesses, I'm now helping them open their own businesses. And in the last 3 years, I've helped 12 of my employees or friends, colleagues, people who work at A Therapeutic Alternative open their own businesses.
That's great.
Yeah. So that's really how we're kind of spreading out is really everybody, if they have the vision and the motivation and the passion, they are capable. Everyone who works with me is so capable. Staying open this long, these are amazing people. And so whoever has the vision to go open a dispensary, that I want to help support them and do what I can.
It's like your children.
Yeah, like sisters.
Sisters.
Yeah.
Okay. So, Khemia, did I pronounce it right?
Yeah.
So tell me about Khemia. What is Khemia?
So Khemia, Khemia is the root word of chemistry and alchemy. And the idea of Khemia is we formed a mother company, which is a company of, it's an advisory board of various women from various industries who are well respected, well known in Sacramento, who the idea is to help foster manufacturers in the cannabis industry who haven't been able to transition, foster them, nurture them into the regulated market, help them scale up first throughout California, then throughout the nation, then throughout the world.
Okay, and when do you guys think about so right now I think you're looking for investors?
We've done a lot, extensive planning. We formed our advisory board and interviewed over 40 manufacturers. And we are starting to interview investors. We have a number of properties we have looked at, and we're at the final stages of really interviewing investors. So spread the word.
Actually, I almost forgot about this. So this month is actually Female Leader Month, and I forget that gender. Sometimes I forget about the gender part, but what are some of the challenges you've seen as being a woman entrepreneur?
Interesting. So you could just call me the token woman, if anyone gets
No,
that.
for the record, I've actually had
Pun intended.
3 events.
It's not many in Canada.
Yeah.
Token. So there's upsides and downsides, right? It can go either way depending on the day. And so you got to take what you can get. But yes, it's all there, the discrimination, the gender discrimination. I've had investors across the table telling my male employee, "Where did you find her? I need a girl like her." I'm like, "I found him." But little things like that. You're just like,
how do you handle something like that?
I just smile, and I'm like, I have no idea. I'm not a good comeback person. I'll think of it like the next day, like, "Oh, I should have said this."
Do you like still do business with that person, or is that just you just like write them off?
Yeah.
All right. Okay. Let me see. And then actually, with that, I'm gonna have time for audience questions. So,
Hello.
from the audience.
Make them good.
Sorry.
First off, these brownies were amazing.
Give it an hour, 2.
Just kidding. All jokes aside, how do you think regulation should be handled medicinally versus recreational?
That's a really good question. So actually the biggest problem with our regulations, our urgency regulations, is that there's an M license and an A license, medical and adult use. It's the biggest problem. We're probably going to see that change within the next couple weeks. So it is an extraordinary burden to have to operate 2 systems, and at this point, until July 1st, we have 1 system. After July 1st, the systems bifurcate, which is going to be very difficult on everyone.
What do you think is going to happen with that?
What do you think is going to help?
What do you think is going to happen with that?
So the Regulations 2.0 should be coming out within the next few weeks. And there's been a lot of advocacy and lobbying over the entire industry to explain the necessity of bringing these 2 systems together. And it's the same plant. Every regulation is the same except for 1 or 2 little things, like a medical patient can have 2,000 milligrams of a concentrate, and an adult user can only have 1,000 milligrams.
Is your tax different?
Not unless you have your state card and you get on the government list.
Also, people don't want to be on the government list?
Yeah. Who's on the government list here?
No way.
Yeah.
What's it cost? $100.
8.25% sales tax. You get off, it's a discount. That's what you get for being on the government list.
So what is the normal taxing now?
So I think our tax is 28.25%, which includes the 8.25% state sales tax, a 15% excise tax, and a 4% city revenue tax, a 1% neighborhood responsibility tax, and let's not forget the tax on the cultivators. We got to remember that. That's another 9.25 per ounce, which is about $150 a pound.
Wow, a lot of taxes.
A lot of taxes. Oh, don't forget about the income tax.
Don't forget about the
280E.
tax on wholesalers too. Yeah, so as
The distributors?
It's not a like very question, we didn't talk about this in advance, it's legitimate, and I think it's helpful for them. So as a, traditional venture financial, half my brain works that way. And we know in technology that SOPs and discipline and the stuff we do around lean management principles and everything that we think is hard about technology, I want you to 100 times that. So for every KPI, every ounce of profitability, every revenue dollar you drive, every step you take that's growth-centric, everything that you think you have to plan on is like, it's 100x right now. But what that's done that I've learned about you and everyone that works with you is that you have adapted in an accelerated way to a level of performance and structure and focus on that performance that you don't even recognize. So I'm curious, what is the one thing that like still really gets under your skin that you feel like is a burden that you can't wait to be lifted once this is no longer the world we have to operate in?
That's a very good question. Gosh, there's so many things. I have to pick one. It's a lot of fun. Gosh, that is an excellent question. There's so many things. There's, banking, 280E.
Yeah, so the banking thing's a big deal, right?
Yeah.
Write-offs right now.
Yeah, so with banking, we change banks every month. Like I said, with 280E, we can't write off our typical write-offs like any other business does on our IRS income taxes.
So your COGS are like, you know that, right?
Yeah.
Well, really a challenge.
It is. But I think that the one thing that really is going to make me happy at the end of the day is when people won't be ashamed to talk to me in public. Like, I have government officials calling me privately to help their mothers, to help their children, police officers, senators, but in public they won't talk to me. And I'm like, oh, this is really interesting. So like 10 years ago they wouldn't talk to me or call me, or like they thought I was like this really bad criminal terrorist. And now they'll like privately call me and I'll help them, but they won't talk to me in public. And so I want to get here where they're like, this is Kimberly. She sells cannabis and it helps my mom. You should talk to her about your mom. Like, like that's where I want to be.
We're in public now.
Yeah, we're getting there. This is an honor.
John?
So do you feel that you have, they always say follow the money, right? And I noticed, and maybe you can give a little bit of clarity if you know anything about it. I heard back in New York, I don't know if it's a Canadian company, it's now
Do you want to ask a question? It looks like
I did,
you want
thank
to-
you.
All right.
now being publicly traded. Is that a Canadian company, do you know, I guess it's on NASDAQ or
There
whatever?
are
So that was,
Canadian
that's the first part of my
companies,
question.
yeah.
The second one is, I heard that former Speaker of the House, John Boehner, is now heading a, I don't know, has he got a seat on the board?
He's on the
or something
board.
to that effect? And so my whole thought is there now a tipping point, now that the money's involved, it's always about following the money, might there be some tipping point with legitimizing this as an actual business, just as alcohol finally, was able to make its...
Well, this is a capitalist society, and our laws follow the money, and our leaders are pushed by advocates and lobbyists. And lobbyists, there's more lobbyists than there are advocates, right? So I'm an advocate, advocating for a cause, and there's lobbyists lobbying for business interests, and that's really, what pushes a lot of the policy in this country. And so absolutely. When the money comes, the policies will change, and we will see a change on the federal level to benefit the lobbyists from large corporations. Just like every other industry that's happened in, I'm sure it will happen in cannabis within 5 to 10 years.
And real quick, can you give us a little background, if you know, how it became a Schedule I drug? Because
Absolutely,
that was
yeah.
demonized back in the day.
It's a really good question. Yeah, so the same way it will become legal, it became illegal. So in the 30s, there were interests of the cotton industry, the timber industry, the petrochemical industry that pushed and lobbied for cannabis, hemp particularly, which is the same plant, it just has less than 0.03% THC, that really lobbied to make hemp and cannabis illegal. And they lobbied because hemp was one of the top industries in this country. The first law on the books in the 1600s was a law that you had to grow hemp, right? George Washington grew it, Abraham Lincoln, Thomas Jefferson. The first flag was made out by Betsy Ross out of it. The first Declaration of Independence was written on hemp. Like, hemp was serious in this country. It was a serious leading industry. And a number of industries were not happy about that and lobbied and produced propaganda to basically get it onto, it didn't get onto the Schedule I Controlled Substances Act wasn't until the 70s. So the first law that prohibited hemp and cannabis in this country was in 1937 when the Marijuana Tax Act passed through Congress. And that's what made it illegal in 1937. And they had this really weird law on the books, which was a law that basically made people self-incriminate, which is against the Fifth Amendment. I always get the amendments mixed up. I hope it's the fifth one. Just Google that.
The fifth.
Okay. Oh, it's not the fifth. It's like the third or something, because the fifth is I have the right to remain silent, right? Okay. So it's a different amendment. One of the amendments against our right to self-preservation and not incriminate ourselves. And so what it said was the Marijuana Tax Act said that you had to take your marijuana down to the government office to get your stamp. And that stamp, like the track and trace system that we're going to implement this year, had to be on the marijuana. But if you took the marijuana there without the stamp, it was illegal. And so a few people got these stamps, not very many, like a few people that knew some people in the government office, basically. And so what happened is in the 70s, there was a court case. You may have heard of Timothy Leary. So Leary versus the something something of the U.S. government, something something. And he won. And it basically said that this law, the Marijuana Tax Act, was a self-incriminating law, and it was taken off the books. And for a few years, cannabis was legal in the United States, but no one knew except Timothy Leary. And and the federal government. So the federal government then implemented the Controlled Substances Act and put cannabis temporarily on Schedule I, or hemp, marijuana, temporarily on Schedule I, and spent a few years studying it. The commission, the Schaefer Commission, which studied it, came back with findings that said it should be taken off of Schedule I. But the federal government and Nixon did not listen and kept it on Schedule I, and it's gone through a series of petitions to try to get it off of Schedule I since then over the last 70, 30, 50 years.
Question? Francisco?
Yeah, so I'm a student over at UC Davis, and it's been really interesting to see, what's going on with legalization. The veterinary program is working with CBD and animals, and then we recently had a professor talk about cannabis on campus, and the room was packed.
Yeah.
There wasn't enough room. It was really interesting to see her go like, oh, you start off being buzzed, and then you get stoned, and then you get, on a PowerPoint slide, like just one of the professors. What do you recommend for a student who is here in the backyard of Sacramento and a part of it all, who may be interested in getting into the industry, or anybody who's interested in getting into the industry?
Good question. That is an excellent question. Oh man, so there are a number of small groups like this that are kind of starting up and really trying to organize people. There's groups like the California Cannabis Industry Association and California Growers Association that have conferences here. You can go to our website and see where the city council meetings and the board of supervisors meetings are every week. And we have a calendar that they pop up there. There's internships. There's groups, like there's another group going on tonight, Women Can 916, that's where the pre-party was. And there's different, small groups like this where people are getting together talking about cannabis, and that's a great place to just meet people and tap in. And I say just, start talking to people, start talking about cannabis. You'd really be surprised who's interested and who wants to talk to you about it. Mm-hmm.
Internship.
Since you brought up the Women in Cannabis event, I saw you speak there a couple of weeks ago, the last one. And one of the things I've heard a lot in the cannabis industry is about how there's a lot of female leaders in the industry, and there's more women leading companies in that industry than overall. Why do you think, it's been that way? And, do you see it continuing that way?
That's a really good question. So, for the last 20 years that we've been building this industry, it has been female owner. There's been a larger percentage of female owners in the cannabis industry than there has been in other industries, especially manufacturers. A lot of most manufacturers that I know that started their companies were women because they're cooking, they're making lotions and tinctures, they're kitchen witches. And a lot of the cultivators are also women. And this, when this industry started, it was based on compassion, based on putting your life on the line for other people, and really, caring about other people. And, women are known for doing that in our societies. It's also a female plant. But what's happening now is the older white gentlemen are taking over. So watch out, it's happening. And in order to transition to the regulated market, you need hundreds of thousands to millions of dollars. And the older white gentlemen in this country have the hundreds of thousands to millions of dollars. So we and everybody else is teaming up with them, and they are either taking over, and the good, nice ones are teaming up with our current industry and helping them transition. But the number of women business owners is decreasing every day in this industry and has drastically decreased since January 1st, 2018.
So a related thought that I haven't finished figuring out yet is one thing I've been hearing. I've been following this venture capitalist Arden Hamilton, who's a black gay woman, and she focuses her fund on investing in people from underrepresented, or what she calls underestimated groups. And one of the things she's mentioned before is how, a lot of people from these underrepresented groups can't go the traditional investing route where you start with friends and family, because their friends and family don't have the money, like you were just mentioning. And one point she made to someone at an event before was how, there are women out there that have enough money to be in the initial class of investors, but they might not know that. So one of the things I would wonder is there a space or any efforts towards getting more women that might be able to be investors to better fund some of these organizations so they don't have to go that sort of predatory route where you might lose your business to an investor that doesn't care about you so much.
Yeah. That is an excellent idea. Tracy she's gonna put in some very good information. I would love to see that, and please give us advice. How do we do that? I don't know. It's not.
We're raising capital right now, and we're raising a piece of our capital for our company is we're looking for a minimum of 5 women for a $250,000 piece of our round. And more and more opportunities for smaller investors to participate in larger pools. So the idea of equity crowdfunding, we're talking to a company in San Francisco, looking to sort of leverage these pieces of our own financing in that way. I think the idea that whether you're male or female, but in this case, we've made a conscious effort you made a conscious effort to count Khemia as a majority-owned female enterprise. And it's social justice and focused on profitability is not to be undermined by the idea that there's social justice in addition. really want to create real equity and real liquidity for women in these industries, and that's a big part of our goal. So we're raising the capital, and anyone who hasn't is interested in engaging in that.
And I love that term underestimated. I'm going to use that every day now. That's awesome. And thank you, Tracy. You know, that's what I'm saying about our industry has to team up. We have to team up. We need people like Tracy who understands that world, who knows how to talk that language. Our industry knows how to grow great cannabis, make great cannabis products, and has a lot of compassion, but we don't necessarily know about, financing, investment, venture capital, whatsoever. So thank you for helping answer that question.
Brenda?
Just along those coattails, there is a woman out of New York, she has a fund called Elevest, Sally Krawcheck. She's doing a lot in this country, and she's really moving the needle forward for VC, for women to get VC funding. You can find her on LinkedIn, she's posting videos now, and she's, I forget the name of her hashtag, but her name is Sally Krawcheck. And just Google like the female VC founders, Eileen Lee out of Silicon Valley. She's doing a lot with Cowboy Ventures also. So it's happening slowly but surely, but it's happening.
A lot of funds that invest in only female founders are making other companies. One called PVG Ventures, built by girls in beautiful neon pink Miami Beach.
What's it called?
Built by Girls Ventures.
Built by girls.
Yeah, PVG Ventures.
Yeah.
Michigan, and they focus on female founders. And they have a lot of statistics that say that if you have equity, as a financial sharpness has statistics that if you have a female founder, the company has a higher chance of success.
63%.
Yeah. Correlation or causation, we get to know, but so far, correlation shows that that's the case. A lot of people are capitalizing on that, so there are funds that do just that.
I mean, I would say a lot though, right?
There's
Because it's still like women who get a small minority of funds.
No, I agree. I'm just saying, as a percentage, it's growing relatively quickly. It could grow faster, but it is growing faster than it used to.
You know what would be awesome is actually to host an investor salon.
Yes.
And we could teach the investment community in Sacramento how to invest in cannabis businesses. I would love to.
Action.
Laura, no.
I just wanted to state that out of the 12 businesses that Kimberly is helping people with, 11 of them are women.
Woo woo! Oh, I forgot 13. Kath isn't on the list. I was writing the list today. I didn't put you on it. I got 13. 13.
So are you saying like is it big tobacco that's trying to come into this industry, or you mentioned these white rich guys? I'm thinking.
A lot of right rich
Is
guys.
that like big tobacco, or is that just?
Yes, they are having conversations with our industry at this time. There's a lot of stuff going on behind the scenes. People are preparing for the future, and big tobacco is one of those industries that's preparing.
I think Marlboro's had a patent on a cannabis cigarette for like a long time.
Oh, cannabis.
Marlboro.
Marlboro. Do you have a question, John?
Yeah. Instinctively, you just come across as like remarkably smart.
I am.
Prodigy, genius. Have you ever applied for Mensa or
No.
anything like that?
No.
No.
I was in Mesa in college. Sounds like Mensa.
Yeah.
If anyone knows what that is, Math, Engineering, and Science Academy, Sac City College. Woo woo. I also organized the first class on cannabis at the Sac City College, called the Chemistry of Cannabis.
It's really good too.
And the chemistry professor, Dr. Diane Bennett, is one of our advisors for Khemia.
So I think I have one more question. You ready? Last question? If not, then my last question.
So a selfish question. I'm a marketing contractor. So I used to work with big companies. Now I work with a lot of different little companies. Is there anything that you've seen? So you talked about how cannabis industry, we partner with people in other industries that are experts in areas we're not experts in. So particularly where it relates to marketing, is there anything you're seeing that like people are in need of, where common stumbles are, or anything like that?
That's an excellent question. So when I started in this industry, everything was in Ziploc bags. There was no marketing, there was no advertising, there was no labeling, there was no branding. And now that regulations are in place, everybody is only going to survive if they act just like every other industry in this country, and they put a lot of money into branding and marketing right now. And if you can invest anywhere, if you're a cannabis company, that's where you need to invest, because that is how you're going to gain brand recognition, and you're going to survive, and you're going to get your foothold on the market. So every cannabis business, now is the time. Most likely they haven't put any, very, very little time and effort into this part of the business, and it has to be done right now. So you're in the right industry at the right time.
So we work with the founder of Honey Agency is on our board, our advisory board, and she's a critical partner in as we roll out the company. But if you look at her as a model, if you look at what Megan's footprint has been and her experience in wine, how she's parlaying, and she really belonged in San Francisco or New York. She's and her team is extraordinary. But they've kept it to the team, and they've become excellent storytellers about cannabis is agriculture, cannabis is human beings. And there are many, many smaller businesses ancillary to the industry who, so don't overprice yourself, become a small boutique marketer, and there's a significant amount of demand for it.
What did you say the name of her?
Honey Agency.
All right, last question for you. Who's your favorite superhero?
Wonder Woman. You know this.
Well,
Can you get me a picture of Wonder Woman?
Well, you are a superhero.
Oh, fancy.
So we actually made a game for
Thank you. Oh, it's a game?
Yeah.
Oh, awesome.
Thank you so much for coming.
Thank you.
And actually, you said something, you're risking your lives to help other people, and I get that, actually. I get that. So thank you.